Hello and welcome to another episode of Focus On. My name is Gyamo Mosipile. We are in Lusaka, Zambia at the inaugural AfCFTA Digital Trade Forum. This event seeks to showcase the potential of the African Continental Free Trade Area to leverage growth through the development of digital trade and services. We spoke to a number of representatives involved in this initiative.
Day three of what many have been describing as a hugely successful effort in trying to raise awareness around digital trading across the African continent. Capture for us, if you will, some of the key themes that ran through the 3 days here.
Thank you very much, Godfrey. We had a very, of course, successful forum that spent 3 days, and we have several themes. And part of the themes touched on digital identities. We had themes covering payments. We had themes covering health, and we had a very important theme on digital inclusion. And all of these encapsulate what the protocol is all about.
Yeah. And if you were to look at the key outcomes, how would you summarize them for us?
We have a 12-point outcome that touches on several issues, and part of these issues is precisely what I have mentioned. And the call to action would be actually pronounced during the closure of the session. Now, one of the things that are quite key there, and I'll pick just a few: digital public infrastructure. We need investments in that particular space. And we call on investors in so saying because the legal framework has been set out, and now there shouldn't be any fear whatsoever to say there will not be the return on investment. So DPI is very important. The other issue that is really, really critical, it is precisely the regulatory reforms that need to come on the back of this particular legal instrument. Now, that's going to be quite a journey to be able to get our members to start that process of legal reforms. And again, the Secretariat has already started and will be soon having the pilot countries taking up those legal reforms.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to touch on that digital public infrastructure that you speak about, because then the question from my side would be, what about the private sector? How do you bring them in?
A very important issue. And really, we are seized with the private sector. We cannot do it without the private sector. Gone are the days where the utility services are only the preserve of the government. It is PPPP. That is the model. And we know that we have a number of different technologies that have been created that can simplify our work, that can simplify the life of our people in the rural areas for them to be brought into the trade ecosystem. And therefore, this cannot be done by governments alone. It has to be done jointly with the private sector.
Yeah. And in terms of those regulatory reforms that you speak about, how confident are you, or maybe let me ask the question differently, from a secretariat perspective, do you see the political will that's required to fast track those reforms? Because we do know that governments tend to move a little bit softly and slowly on these things.
There is no question about us having no political will. We do have political will. We have 3 countries that have pronounced themselves that they are going to lead the charge on behalf of the continent, this being Nigeria, South Africa, as well as Kenya, and these being the co-champions who now will actually spearhead resource mobilization, ensuring that countries take up the mantle and they live up to their commitments in the agreement. Yeah. So the political will, there's no question about us not having it. It is actually here, and the presidents are seized with it. Not the least, as we had the opening ceremony of this particular forum, the president of Zambia, His Excellency Hichilema, was very clear as to the commitment at the highest level in as far as digital trade is concerned. And of course, His Excellency President Boko as well was very, categorically said this is the path, this is the time for us to undertake this revolution. And of course, we have to make it happen.
Absolutely. And so this was, of course, the inaugural digital forum, forum for pushing digital trade across the African continent. What next?
We have a program that is actually being unrolled, again, led by these co-champions, the 3 countries. It spans several areas. Already I talked about DPI. It also covers digital financial inclusion. It touches on the upskilling of businesses, the reforms that, again, are required by government. In fact, at the Secretariat, we have come up with a model that we believe it's a departure from how we build capacity across the continent. It covers 5 areas. The first area, building the technical capacity. Secondly, building the administrative capacity. And thirdly, building the institutional capacity. Fourthly, building the regulatory capacity. And fifthly, building the infrastructural capacity. We call it a tariff model. Through that model, we know that we'll be able to push the canvas and expand it and ensure that we actually have real change on the ground.
When we look at the digital trade protocol, I know that it has been adopted last year, now finalized in 2025. The next step is implementation. Kindly walk us through what that looks like.
Yes, fantastic. Thank you so much for having me here. First and foremost, really great to see the forum happen. It's a forum that we've been working on for some time. I'd like to thank President Hakainde Hichilema for hosting us so brilliantly, and of course the government of Zambia and the ministries who've worked so hard. Certainly we're already implementation actually. We're in, as we sit here in Zambia, Zambia has already started to actually implement some of the elements that are in the protocol. For example, the AI, right? Zambia has actually been selected as an AI champion for the continent of Africa and has been actually starting to look at supporting young people, come up with new AI models and developing those models. So again, in terms of implementation, what we mean is really to get it done, really to roll it out. So we want all the member states across the continent to actually adopt that protocol, domesticate, which basically means, adapt into your local context and ensure that those regulations and policies are also fit for purpose in your local markets. But remember, we're also talking about the African continent. We're not talking about just the national level. Yes, you need to domesticate at national level, but you also have to make sure that those policies are also interoperable with your neighbors, right? Because we want to encourage inter-African trade, and that is the main purpose of us, doing what we're doing. And in order to do that, countries have to interoperate both in systems, in laws, in collaboration, right? We have to try and work together.
You make mention that it is part of the core mandate to increase intra-African trade, and your jurisdiction is far and wide, 54 countries, almost the entire African continent. But when we take a look at the component of digital trade itself, especially then onboarding member states to embrace it, how big of a component is it? And are there any challenges on aligning all of the different participating members?
100%. I think even when we were working, we worked as part of the expert task force, looking at the digital trade protocol, right? And you have member states coming in with very different structural economic situations. They come in with different policies. Some might have policies, some don't. So the complexity of it is quite challenging for sure. And I think member states understand that we all want to, create intra-African trade for sure, but we have to bear in mind that we are not necessarily at the same development levels. For example, how do we collectively come together and work together so that we don't leave one nation behind and we have another one sort of progressing? And I think the protocol also allows for that because it is pretty much merging the economies, and the economies are coming together and saying, yes, we agree on data. This is how we want to handle data. This is how we want to handle digital payments. This is how we want to handle emerging technologies. So there's a common, understanding, and there's harmonization of regulation which needs to happen. And once you do that, it makes it less complex, right? Because at the moment, 54, 55, very complex. But when you start to adopt, standards, common standards, you start to adopt common frameworks, you start to develop regulation that is in alignment with the different countries, the complexity starts to reduce. And that way you're going to start to see growth not just in a Zambia or in a South Africa or in a Nigeria or Lesotho, Eswatini, you start to see growth across the continent. And of course, we want to grow intra-African trade, like I said when I started, right? We can't have, for example, Nigeria shooting off with 20% increase or whatever it is, and then you have a Lesotho with, 2%. When we're not going to achieve our goal, right? Our goal really is to ensure that the countries are all developing and benefiting from the AfCFTA and, of course, the digital trade protocol.
But another challenge that can often rear its head and really show the different levels at which different countries are operating is infrastructure. We understand when it comes to digital and ICT challenges that there is a real need for fast and efficient technologies to then leverage these technologies. What are the instruments, plans, and strategies in place?
Yeah, no, it's exciting. To be honest, I think for me, the exciting thing is that Africa can literally leapfrog and has been leapfrogging, and in fact has created new solutions that the rest of the world hasn't. Good example is the protocol itself. It's the first in the world. You know what I mean? And when we talk about digital technologies, so these are, I call them tools, right? These are just tools to help you. When you're building your house, you need your bricks, you need your this and that. Digital technologies are basically that. You need to have certain technologies to help you. To help to implement and deliver on the protocol. So when you have things like artificial intelligence, we just finished a session on AI. And AI, for example, I know the world is investing heavily, Saudi Arabia, 100 billion, America, 100 billion. And even here, we're talking about, co-creating a fund for the continent. All the countries come together and put a fund together for AI deployment, because with AI, again, you're going to see AI really deployed in major sectors that we need for the growth and industrialization that we want for Africa, right? So manufacturing, processing, agriculture, automotive industry. Application of AI will happen in all those sectors. Education. We heard a lot about education yesterday from our presidents, right? Both of them, right? I was very, very inspired by both our presidents who were here yesterday. And they really talked about real things, right? Because in Africa, we have to contextualize. We were not necessarily in the US or, in London. What is the realities for us? We want to educate our young population because we're going to have a young population. We have to provide them jobs. They have to create jobs because you can with things like digital technologies, with blockchain, with AI, with cybersecurity, you can create new jobs. So we're not sitting and waiting for government necessarily to say, okay, government, it's all your job to create us jobs. No. We are going to work with you to create new jobs, but we also want you to create a very good environment for us to come in as young innovators, young entrepreneurs, right? Support the women entrepreneurs. We heard a lot about that. Access to capital for women, for example, it doesn't have to carry on. We need to be able to make sure that we provide the access to capital. And again, digital technologies are going to play a very big part. Especially, when you look at things like digital financing, right? Mobile money. The mobile penetration in Africa, at the moment is one of the groundbreaking. I mean, in terms of mobile utility across Africa, this is one of the most innovative things, especially around mobile money. The rest of the world is looking at Africa and saying, oh, how do you do that? How did you do it like that? Look at the things like, not even beyond M-Pesa. You look at the telcos today. The telcos are not just telecommunications companies anymore. They're providing loans. They have the most data sets. I mean, for me as a technology expert, I really want to get close to the telcos because they have a lot of data I need to be able to create solutions for people, right? So again, we need to kind of collaborate and work together for new solutions.
And that's how we wrap up this episode of Focus On at the inaugural AfCFTA Digital Trade Forum hosted in Lusaka, Zambia. From me, Kiamo Mosipele, and the rest of the CNBC Africa team, it's goodbye for now.